You know, when we think about history, we usually picture these grand, serious moments, right? Epic battles, famous speeches, noble leaders. But sometimes history has this really dark, kind of twisted sense of humor. Today, we're diving into some of the most bizarre ways people have checked out, the stories where fate clearly decided to have the last laugh. So let me ask you a question. What on earth could a 4.5-foot-long beard, a loaded pistol, and a simple orange peel possibly have in common? I know, it sounds like the setup to a really weird joke, but believe it or not, these three random things are the actual culprits behind some of history's most unbelievable deaths. Let's get into it. All right, our first story takes us way back to the 16th century. We're talking about a guy whose greatest pride, his most famous feature, became his literal downfall. This is the absolutely wild tale of Mayor Hans Steininger and his legendary and lethal beard. Now, Hans wasn't just some guy famous for his facial hair. He was a genuinely respected and beloved politician. He was the mayor of a town called Braunau am Inn, which sits right on the border of what we now call Austria and Germany. And his people loved him. I mean, they elected him 6 times in a row. That tells you something. But let's be real. His defining feature was, without a doubt, that beard. And when I say it was long, I'm not kidding. It measured over 4.5 feet. To manage it, he'd usually keep it all rolled up and tucked away safely in a little leather pouch. Smart, right? Well, on September 28th, 1567, everything went wrong. A fire broke out in town. Total chaos. And in the middle of all that panic, Hans rushed to help. But he made one tiny, critical mistake. He forgot to tuck his beard away. As he was hurrying down a staircase, he stepped right on his own facial hair, tripped, and the fall snapped his neck. Just like that. And here's where it gets even weirder. As a tribute to the man they loved so much, the townspeople actually had his famous beard removed and chemically preserved. You can still go see it today, on display in a local museum. It's a bizarre, but I guess fitting memorial to a great mayor and his one-of-a-kind exit. Okay, so from a fatal fashion statement, we're moving on to a fatal legal argument. Our next case comes from 19th century America and features a lawyer whose dedication to his client went horribly, and I mean perfectly, ironically, wrong. So picture this. It's 1871. A lawyer named Clement Vallandigham is in a courtroom defending a guy named Thomas McGahan, who's accused of killing someone in a bar fight. Vallandigham's entire defense, the whole case, rested on one single, pretty bold claim. The victim wasn't murdered at all. He had accidentally shot himself. Vallandigham was so confident, so sure he was right, that he decided he was going to show the court exactly how it happened. He planned to reenact the very moment the victim supposedly fumbled for his pistol, causing it to go off by accident. And the irony here is it's almost poetic. For his big reenactment, Vallandigham grabbed a pistol off a table, thinking it was the unloaded one from evidence. It wasn't. It was another pistol, and it was very much loaded. As he pulled the gun from his pocket to show the jury how it could happen, he shot himself in the stomach, tragically and flawlessly proving his own point. So, the result? His fatal demonstration was so incredibly convincing that the jury totally bought it. They acquitted his client. Thomas McGahan walked out a free man. Clement Vallandigham, on the other hand, died from his wound about 12 hours later. He won his case in the most dramatic way imaginable, literally at the cost of his own life. For our final story, we've got a man who spent his entire life laughing in the face of death, only to get taken down by something so ridiculously mundane it's almost comical. Meet the great daredevil Bobby Leech. Bobby Leech was the real deal. This guy was a professional risk-taker. His whole job was performing death-defying stunts at one of the most dangerous spots on the entire planet, Niagara Falls. And his resume was just nuts. He parachuted from bridges into raging rapids. In 1911, he sealed himself up in a custom steel barrel and went right over the falls. He actually survived, becoming only the second person to do so, but he didn't exactly walk away unscathed. We're talking a broken jaw and 2 shattered kneecaps. He became a huge international celebrity, touring the world telling everyone his incredible story. So after surviving the insane, roaring power of Niagara Falls, what finally brought this legend down? An orange peel. I am not making this up. In 1926, while on a speaking tour in New Zealand, he was walking down the street, slipped on a stray piece of orange peel, and snapped his leg. The wound got infected, gangrene set in, and a few days later, the great Bobby Leech was dead. So let's just recap for a second. We have a respected mayor, a brilliant lawyer, and a world-famous daredevil. 3 completely different lives, all ending in ways that are almost too strange to believe. So we saw a symbol of wisdom and authority become a fatal tripwire. We watched a clever legal defense turn into a deadly, real-life demonstration. And we learned how a life spent chasing the most extreme dangers was ultimately ended by a piece of fruit trash on the sidewalk. You know, this all brings us to one final thought. The deaths of these men were absolutely tragic, of course, but they were also profoundly, almost comically absurd. It really makes you wonder, if death is the one thing in life that's guaranteed for all of us, does fate sometimes just have a really, really twisted sense of humor?